Our first conversation was maybe April of 2020, and you were just appointed as the command senior enlisted leader of U.S. Space Command. I was on site at Peterson Air Force Base, Peterson Space Force Base now, a couple of
Yeah.
times where we did interviews. And so you know the space domain very, very well. You've been immersed in it the last 3 or 4 years. And what I want to ask you is around the potential of space tourism, space mining, space colonization. It's a really, really fascinating domain to kind of explore and to imagine what the future might look like. And I just did a stat of the week in our newsletter today. Fewer than 700 people as of November of last year, fewer than 700 people have been in space. 69 of them were tourists. And so actually space tourism is here. And I feel like we're just at the precipice of this taking off. So let's talk about, where do you see space going? And you could talk about tourism, you could talk about mining, you could talk about colonization, wherever you want to go with it. And let's talk about over the next 10 years. What do you think? Where do you think we go?
Well, it's not going anywhere. It's only going to grow, and I think much like the high definition television used to be $5,000 and $10,000. Today, the average citizen can't afford to go into space and to do any type of space tourism. And I think in the next 10 years, it's still going to be tremendously expensive. Quite frankly, probably for the next 25 to 50 years, if not longer, it's going to be very, very expensive to do that. But over time, as capacity and capability, as we can launch rockets into space more often, and some of that has to do with regulatory challenges, where you're not just going to be nonstop. If you go to Los Angeles, LAX, or Atlanta, there's probably a plane taking off every 30 seconds. I don't know what the timing is, but it's go, 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 go. You can't do that in space currently because of regulations. You can't just constantly be blasting things off. You got noise issues. You got the traffic that everyone's going to stop and watch it. We're going to have to get through some of that so that we can launch more often and rapidly. And I don't think it's going to get to the point anytime in the future that I can see where we're going to be launching as often as at a major airport. But once we can do this more often and reuse, like SpaceX has done, multiple phases of the rocket so that they're saving cost and the cost can come down, we're going to get there. And I don't know that it's in 10 years, but I do believe that eventually, much like the International Space Station, we will have space hotels where you can take your family to the space hotel for a weekend getaway or whatever. Still going to be very expensive. But this is going to happen. This is going to grow. And it's going to grow because of the second thing that you talked about in space. And that is the fact that we're not going back to space because of the goodness of our heart necessarily. And we're not going back solely for science purposes. We're going back because we're going there because there are resources there. There are resources to make our cell phones. There are resources to help with lithium batteries, whether that's cobalt or you name it. There are a lot of resources out there. And there's even potentially, there's a company out there that's looking at one of Saturn's moons and being able to go there and get water and bring it back. And can you imagine, once we can get into space and find places where we can have water, which is necessary, obviously, for life, and then we can use other things with precious metals and resources that are out there. If technology continues to grow and move out fast enough, there's great potential that not only do we have space tourism, but possibly, if science evolves quickly enough, we're truly going to be able to be a multi-planetary species. And this is why I'm excited about commercial space so much, because they are leading. I've said this a million times. It's no longer good enough to have a whole of government approach. It's truly about the whole of society. And in space, and quite frankly, in cyberspace, the commercial sector is driving well ahead. You go to any place that is occupied by SpaceX employees, and you'll see that Occupy Mars T-shirt. I think it's fair to say that we're going to, you look at, I forgot the name of it, but we're about to put a man and a woman on the moon soon again, a woman for the first time. We're getting ready to do that. Shortly thereafter, NASA's going to pivot and start looking at how do we get humans on Mars. And I know SpaceX and other companies are looking at that as well. We're going to need to have probably some refueling stations of some sort in space for the logistics of that, possibly even some logistical nodes out there for food and other things that humans require. But this is why I'm so excited about what's going on in space, because the natural resources are out there, the precious metals and all the things that we require to build the technology and the things that we need to get into space. And yeah, it's going to be cool. I hope one day that I can take my daughters into space as a tourist, or at the very least, they get to go there with their families.
I'm not sure if you saw this, but I finished the Wright brothers biography. Yeah, it's really, really fascinating. So I'll just kind of walk you through a timeline. They were first in flight December of 1903. And then by 1919, two men from England, I believe, flew the first transatlantic flight nonstop from St. John's in Newfoundland to Ireland. It was only about 1,800 miles. But they did that in 1919. 1927, Lindbergh does it solo. 1969, there's a man on the moon. And in 2019, there were 36 million passenger seats that made the trip across the Atlantic safely.
Yeah.
So that's in the
Wow.
course of 120 years, less than 120 years, we advanced that much. And that first flight, I think it went 120 feet, was 12 seconds long. So we have the capability of moving really, really quickly. And when I talk about space, people look at me like, you're out of your mind, colonization, mining. No, I'm not out of my mind. And maybe it's not 10 years where this stuff happens, but it will happen within our lifetimes unless, we live very short lives, which I don't think we're going to.
Yeah, it's going to happen. It's exciting. Well, there's naysayers everywhere, right? And that's okay. That's fine. Just because we believe it doesn't mean it's going to happen. But I don't know what I have seen, the advancements in technology, just from my time at the 3 years I was at Space Command, and the leaps in technology that have been made. I think if you couple that with what I call large language models, some today call artificial intelligence, it's not truly how I would define artificial intelligence yet. But once we get there, or get a little bit more advanced, and we have advanced robotics, quite frankly, there's going to be no reason why we couldn't put some robots on there with some generative AI. And as long as we have a way to communicate with them, we couldn't put them on Mars, bring equipment with them, and have us start setting up colonies and that sort of thing like that. And then get the fuel and the water and the resources we need. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. That's the only reason. That's not the only reason. This is one reason why when I listen to your podcast, I love hearing about the future of health and longevity, because I'm hopeful that I can live a very long life. I want to see all of this. It's so fascinating to me. Look at the James Webb Telescope. We have a time machine looking back billions of years to see what happened then. How is that possible? Well, maybe if you told me 5 years ago we were going to look back in time billions of years, I would have thought you were crazy, or you were watching, too much Michael J. Fox. But now it's here. And what's it going to be in 5 and 10 years? It's only going to get better.
What happens with ownership? So when a country goes to, let's say, a moon on Saturn, do they own that? If a company goes to lands on an asteroid or something like that, do they own that? What do you expect will happen there?
In the future, what we're going to have are companies, many companies that have greater worth than most nations have GDP. And we're seeing a transition here from whether it's Apple or Microsoft or NVIDIA or whatever, these companies that are getting great wealth. And I'm not implying anything negative about how they've done this, but they've done it. They've achieved such wealth. And what's gonna stop them to say, listen, we can get you to Mars today, and we're going to do that. But Mars is now going to be Mars brought to you by Google, and Jupiter is Jupiter brought to you by Microsoft. Okay, these are examples. I know no inside information that says this is going to happen, but I think we're going to have to figure this out because there's really no way to operate in space without the vast investment of the commercial sector. It's such a great percentage of our GDP, and we have so many other issues and challenges right here on Earth that we can't just put our entire GDP into space exploration. It's truly going to be allies and partners in all of the above. But these commercial companies with quite frankly, we may have a trillionaire soon. I think I just saw Elon Musk's net worth is a little over 230 billion. So he's a quarter of the way there himself to being a trillionaire. I mean, this is a type of money we can't even fathom for an individual. I mean, he could spend billions of dollars per day and really it's not even noticeable. So we're going to have to figure this out. And I think the United Nations is going to have to, with the help of the United States and others, we're going to have to decide what international law is. Otherwise, if a nefarious actor, if a state, a rogue state goes there first and says this is now our territory and we will go to war with you, and they're a superpower, man, that's not good. We need to have those agreements well ahead of time, and the clock is ticking.